or follow the order of operations, also known as PEMDAS. Number 1, we're going to substitute -3 and +7 in for m and n. So you should have -3 minus 7 quantity squared. Order of operations work inside out. What's -3 minus 7 more? -10. What's it mean to square something? Take it times itself. So what's -10 times -10? 100. Positive or negative? Positive. Anytime you square something, it should come out positive, because you're either going to multiply a positive times positive, which is still positive, or a negative times a negative. If you used your calculators and you did this, -10 squared, the calculator is doing the order of operations. To the calculator, this looks like -1 times 10 squared. So the calculator squares 10 first and then takes it times -1, right? Hopefully you shouldn't have to put -10 squared in the calculator. But if you do, you always have to put your negative in parentheses. Number 2, n minus m quantity squared. 7 minus -3 quantity squared. Go inside out. 7 minus -3. It's 10, right? Becomes positive minus negative. Riley, what's 10 squared? 100. Good. So you should have 100 for both these. Number 3, m squared plus n squared. So -3 squared plus 7 squared. -3 squared is what? 9. And 7 squared is, and the sum of 9 and 49? 58. Order of operations. Square it, then add them. Exponents, then addition. All right, 4, 5, and 6. Same idea with new values here. Number 4, 6 minus -8 quantity squared. That's 6 minus -8. Good, and it becomes plus, so this would be 14 squared. 14 times 14? Good, 196. Number 5, what's this funky symbol? Good, the square root. All right, so we're going to take the square root of 6 squared plus -8 squared. What's 6 squared? Plus, what's -8 squared? Add first, what's 36 plus 64? What's the square root of 100? 10. If you take the square root of something, it should be positive. You shouldn't ever have a negative square root. And number 6. 6 plus -8 all over 2. That's 6 plus -8. And -2 over 2 is -1. Questions on any of those expressions? Okay, that's the algebra that you're going to see today. All right. That general idea. You're going to have to get to that point, but that's what you'll be doing. All right, here we go. 1.8, the coordinate plane. We are going to the x and y axis to end the chapter. Just to refresh your memory, the coordinate plane is formed by 2 number lines called the axis, intersecting at right angles. If these axes intersect to form a right angle, we would say they're what to each other? Good, they're perpendicular. The x-axis is our horizontal one. The y-axis is the vertical. They meet at the origin, which has the ordered pair of what? 0, 0. Good. And then it gets divided into 4 different quadrants. The coordinates of a point on a coordinate plane are in the form x, y, and we call that their ordered pair. The numerical value that you get for x, y is called the ordered pair. Those 4 quadrants that we get from the 2 axes. Quadrant 1, your x is positive, your y is positive. Quadrant 2, we got to go counterclockwise. X is negative because you're going left, but y is still positive. Quadrant 3, Both negative because you go left and down. Then quadrant 4, x becomes positive, but y stays negative because you go down. We are going to find the distance between 2 points on the coordinate plane, and we're going to find the midpoint of segments on the coordinate plane. We're going to start with distance. The distance between 2 points on a coordinate plane can be found using this formula, where d equals the square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 quantity squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 quantity squared. I believe that's typed for you on your paper. You might want to highlight it, star it, circle it, I don't know, something so you know where it's at. The little 2's and the little 1's here, these subscripts, those tell you what point the x and y values come from. Are they coming from the second ordered pair, or are they coming from the first ordered pair? You always subtract inside of the parentheses, but then you always add outside. And you can't forget to square them. That's probably the most common mistake, is forgetting to square them. Number 1 asks, how far is the subway ride from Oak to Symphony? Round your answer to the nearest tenth. Each unit represents 1 mile. So when I look at the graph, between each unit, that's 1 mile in distance. Okay? We want to know what the distance is from Oak to Symphony. What quadrant is Oak in? The third one. Good. What would we say its ordered pair is? Excellent. -1, -2. What quadrant is Symphony in? 1. What is its ordered pair? 1, 2. Good. We're going to find the distance for this subway ride. Can I count it? No, I can't count diagonal length. So I'm going to use my distance formula. You have it on the top. I'm going to rewrite it here since I lost it. x2 minus x1 quantity squared plus y2 minus y1 quantity squared. All right, first step. Label your ordered pairs. The little 1 and the little 2 tell you what point they come from. My first point was Oak. So I'm going to say that -1 is x1 and -2 is y1. It's the first x value, the first y value. Symphony is the second point. So then +1 is going to be x2 and +2 is going to be y2. It's the second x value and the second y value. You're going to take those 4 in blue and substitute them in to your distance formula. Equals the square root of. Okay, what was my x2 value? 1 minus my x1 value. -1. Quantity squared plus, bless you, y2, 2 minus y1. Quantity squared. If you want to, but don't mess it up. Because then you might always think that you add in the inside and you don't. Okay, once you have them substituted in, use your algebra skills, order of operations, and work inside out. 1 minus -1 comes plus, so what's 1 plus 1? 2. And 2 squared is, so now we have the square root of 4 plus the y's. 2 minus -2 becomes plus. What's 2 plus 2? And 4 squared is, all right, what's 4 plus 16? So this becomes the square root of 20. Is there a square root of 20, a nice one? No. So then we have to round to the nearest tenth. So you're going to need a calculator. Borrow your friends maybe next to you. Square root 20, enter. To the nearest tenth, how many decimal places? 1. So 4.4 or 4.5? 4.5, 4.5. Anytime you round an answer, Use your approximate symbols. Our subway ride is about 4.5 miles. It's approximately. Bless you, it wasn't exactly. If you can't find that square root symbol, let me know and I will help you. Hit second, and then squared. It's like the 5th button down on the left. Yep. Oh, clear that out first. Now hit second, that button. Yes. And now put 20 in there. There you go. All right, let's go to example 2. This time they want us to find the distance between Elm and Symphony. Okay, Elm, what quadrant is Elm in? 3. Way down here, what is its ordered pair? -3, -6. I'm just going to write that right above it so I have it there. Symphony, we did that one from the last problem, and that's still at 1, 2. It didn't move. So now we're going to find this distance. Should it be smaller or larger than Oak to Symphony? Larger, right? Should be a longer distance, hopefully. Okay. Label your ordered pairs. The first point we're talking about is Elm. So -3 is going to be x1. -6 will be y1. It's the first x value, the first y value I see. Then Symphony, x2, y2. I don't have my distance formula typed on the same page like you do, so I'm just going to write it down again. When I wrote mine down this time, I did y1 minus y2 and x1 minus x2, where yours does the 2's minus the 1's. It doesn't matter, as long as they're consistent. Okay? So if you want to do x1 minus x2, then you got to make sure you do y1 minus y2. You don't want to go back and forth between them. If you already started doing it with x2's, that's fine. If I do it with the formula I have up here, I'd get -3 minus 1 quantity squared plus -6 minus 2 quantity squared. What's -3 minus 1 more? What's -4 squared? 16, good. -6 minus 2. -8 squared. 64. Remember, when you square something, it should always be positive. You should not be seeing negative numbers after you square. 16 plus 64. Square root of 80 comes out to be about what? 8.9 miles. Good. Tyler, is it longer than our previous one? Awesome. That's what we want. -4 squared. Jack? You could, but it wouldn't matter. You'd get the same distance anyways. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, if they listed Symphony first, then yeah, I probably would have made that x1, y1, and then the other one x2, y2. Yeah. All right, part B of this one. Says Maple is located 6 miles west and 2 miles north of City Plaza. Find the distance between Cedar and Maple. Well, Cedar's on our map. It's here in quadrant 2. But Maple's not there. We have to put it on there based off what they gave me. They say it's 6 miles west and 2 miles north of City Plaza. Is City Plaza on the map? Located at the origin. Good, okay. So if Maple's 6 miles west of City Plaza, which direction should I move to go west? Left, good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it's 2 miles north of that. Up or down? Up, good. Here's Maple. We're trying to find the distance between Cedar and Maple. Well, we need to know their ordered pairs. What's Cedar's ordered pair? -3, 1. And Maple ends up being where? Good, -6, 2. Cedar was listed first, so I'm just going to call that my x1, y1. Maple was listed second, so we're going to call that x2, y2. Take a minute here so to find the distance. All right, I'm going to write my distance formula down again like it's typed on your paper. So x2 minus x1 quantity squared plus y2 minus y1 quantity squared. And hopefully this will look more like how you did it. The square root of -6 minus -3 quantity squared plus 2 minus 1 quantity squared. The x's, -6 minus -3, that becomes plus. What's -6 plus 3? -3, and -3 squared is 9 plus 2 minus 1. 1 squared is, and 9 plus 1 is, and the square root of 10 is approximately 3.2 miles. Questions? Now, if you did x1 minus x2 and y1 minus y2, you should still get the same answer, because it's the distance between the two endpoints. All right, go ahead and do the next one on your own. Find the distance between R and S. Since distance is the same as the length between the 2 points, you could also write this as RS equals. Because remember, without a symbol over it, it means length. So we could say the length of RS is equal to 6 minus -2 squared plus -2 minus 6 squared. 6 minus -2 becomes positive, and it's a positive 8, and positive 8 squared is 64. Plus -2 minus 6 is -8. -8 squared is also 64. Add them together, and you get 128. Which is about 11.3. So the length of segment RS would be about 11.3. You need to know this distance formula for your test on Thursday, but we will also be using it throughout the year. My suggestion, write it down every time you use it. So if you're going to use it on question 1, write it down and then plug it in. If you're going to do it on question 2 on your homework, write it down and then plug it in. Okay? It'll get stuck in your head. How did you learn to write your name? You wrote it multiple times. Right? Okay. Flip it over. You have a second formula today, the midpoint formula. Okay, we're going to skip that little triangle thing on the top. You can cross through that. Oh, geez. Last week, when we did like the segment addition postulate and whatnot, we talked about the midpoint of a segment. Segment AB, if M is its midpoint, would I put it here? How about over here? How about here? It looks about right. Why not to the left or to the right? Middle, midpoint, exactly, good. When it's right in the middle, what does that tell us about AM and MB? They are congruent, they're equal in length. Excellent. So we're still doing midpoint, but instead of being on a single number, it plane. So you have an x value and a y value. So really you're trying to find two midpoints, because you're trying to find the midpoint of the x's and the midpoints of the y, because you need an x value and a y value. Your midpoint value, formula, x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Highlight that or circle it or something there next on your paper. If you add two things and divide by 2, what are you finding about those two things? Like there's 26 of you in here, so if I added all 26 of your quiz scores up and then divided by 20, the average. Midpoint is the average of the endpoints. So you find the endpoints, add them together and divide by 2 because there's two endpoints. Okay, you're finding the average of the endpoints. So number 4. Segment AB has endpoints 8, 9, and -6, -3. They want us to find the coordinates of the midpoint. Just like we started distance formula by labeling the values, that's what I'm going to suggest here for the midpoint. Because midpoint formula also uses x1, x2, y1, y2. Those little 1s and 2s, just which point they come from. So I'm going to say that 8, 9 is my first point, so I'm going to call it x1, y1. And -6, -3 is my second one, so x2, y2. I don't have it up here anymore, but you do. x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. Substitute what we just labeled. What should I substitute in for x1? How about in for x2? What should I substitute in for y1? How about in for y2? Simplify. 8 plus -6. 2 over 2 becomes 9 plus -3. 6 over 2, 3. There's the midpoint of segment AB. You could have a negative value now, yep. Exactly. Make sure you put your answers in parentheses, because it's an ordered pair and that's notation. And you can double check these. If it's the midpoint, you guys told me it has to be in the middle, right? 1 is the x value of my midpoint, so I'm going to look at the x values of my endpoints. 8 and -6. How far is 1 from +8? 7. How far is 1 from -6? Is 1 in the middle of them? Sure is. We can check that with your y's too. 9 and -3. How far is 9 from +3? 6. How far is -3 to +3? Is it in the middle? Yeah, it should be. It's the midpoint. Jack. If it says use the midpoint formula, then I gotta see it. Does that answer your question? Okay. All right, we're gonna skip 5 for a second. We're gonna just go to 6. Go ahead and do number 6 for me. For number 6, I'm gonna just say x is my first point. So x1, y1, x2, y2. My midpoint then, 2 plus 6 over 2, -5 plus 13 over 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Should have a midpoint at 4, 4. Double check. Is 4 right between 2 and 6, right in the middle of them? Yeah, I hope so. How about -5 and 13? Yeah, because 13 minus 4 is 9, right? And 4 minus 9, wouldn't that bring me to -5? Okay, there's the same distance between them. All right, back to number 5. Number 5 says the midpoint of segment DG is M, -1, 5. One endpoint is D, which is at 1, 4. Find the coordinates of the other endpoint. I would listen to this if I were you. This time, we know the midpoint, and we're trying to find the other endpoint. 3 and 5, you had to, or 4 and 6, you had to find the midpoint. This time I gave you the midpoint. Any thoughts of where we could start to figure out where G is located, the other endpoint? No thoughts? How could we find the other endpoint? Brady? You double the midpoint? How so? What do you mean? Oh, and since I know the midpoint, I'm just going to do the opposite. Okay, so if I double it, I would get -210, right? And that would be G. Ever tell me? No. Oh, because I added the other time? algebraically, but he is saying it correctly. The midpoint formula. Bear with me here while I write this. X sub m, y sub m, that's the x and y of my midpoint. And then x1, x2, those are your endpoints, and y1, y2, those are your endpoints. So to find the x value of your midpoint, we go based off of what's given here. You guys agree? Okay. What is the x value of my midpoint? -1. Equals, so I'm just going to connect the two that I. That's the x value of an endpoint. Do I know an x value of one of my endpoints? Yeah, what is it? 1 right here. D is an endpoint. So I'm going to substitute 1 in for x1. Do I know the endpoint of my, or the x value of my other endpoint? No, that's what we're going to try and find, so I'm going to leave it as x. Divided by 2. I'm trying to get x by itself. So I have to get rid of the 2. It's divided by 2. So how do I move something to the other side if it's dividing? Multiply, right, Brady? Okay. Or double it. I think that's how you referred to it. They cancel over here. 2 times -1. -2, right? Now instead of adding 1, what do? Thanks. -2 minus 1. -3. Is that what you had in your head? -3. That's our x value of g. Let's think about this. X, horizontal, right, guys? M is at -1. Here's 0. Here's M. -1, the midpoint. D is at +1. How far is it from M to D? From -1 to 1? 2, right? So if M is supposed to be in the middle, should I move right or left to figure out the other endpoint? Left, right? And when I go 2, to figure out where G is, which is -3, isn't that what we just did? Okay, try it with Y. YM, the midpoint of my Y value, or the Y value of my midpoint, should match what this is. Those should be equivalent. What is the Y value of my midpoint? What? I'm going to have to buy popsicle sticks and write your names on it. What's the midpoint, or what's the Y value of my midpoint? 5, good. Equals, I need an endpoint of Y. 4 plus, do I know the other one? Okay, so we're going to put that as Y all over 2. Instead of dividing, I got to do what to get rid of it? Multiply. Cancels. 2 times 5 equals 4 plus Y. How do I bring 4 over? Subtract it, and Y equals what? 6. Okay, well, let's think about this one. Y, my vertical axis. M, the midpoint's at 5. D, one endpoint, was at 4. Does it make sense that G would be at 6 then? Yeah, because M's got to be right in the middle of them. So the ordered pair for G would be -3, 6. There's 2 ways in one that we showed. Algebraically, what Brady was talking about. Or you can do kind of like a graph, count it. If M is at -1, and I'm supposed to have the same distance between the endpoints, and I knew from M to D it was 2, well then from M to G it's also got to be 2, so figure out which direction you need to move. Go ahead and try the last one, number 7, I believe. It's the same idea. They give you the midpoint and they want you to find one of the endpoints. If I was going to do it by graphing it, my midpoint is at 4, -6. just a second. Okay. Is at 4, -6. Here's my midpoint. Call it M. One endpoint, X, is at 2, -3. If I wanted to find Y, the other endpoint of the segment, would I look for it in quadrant 1? No, probably not. How about quadrant 2? Oh, hopefully not. How about 3? No, it's got to be in quadrant 4. Remember, X, Y is the segment. Would it make sense for Y to be to the right of X? Like right here? Why wouldn't that make sense? Because it wouldn't make a line where M was on it, right? Okay, how are we going to figure out where to put Y? What you doing? Yeah, what were you just doing? Counting what? How were you counting it? Like how though? Like did you count like? You can't count diagonally, can you? Yes, you can use the slope. Yeah. Because doesn't the distance from one endpoint? Say yes. Good. So count the slope. Do I run first or do we rise first? You rise first. In this case, we're going down. So you're going to go down 1, 2, 3, and then run 1, 2. Do the same thing. Down 1, 2, 3, and over 2. Hopefully, when you did it on your own, you got your Y value to be at 6, -9. Oh. Homework. Page 56, 1 through 11 odds.